වෙසෙසු සංස්කෘතික මංගල්‍යයක උත්කර්ෂය ලොවක් මවිත කළ ඓතිහාසික කන්ද උඩරට ඇසළ පෙරහැර මහා මංගල්‍යයේ සිරි විසිතුර විඳ ගැනීමටයි ඔබ සූදානම් වෙන්නේ. උතුම් දළදා හාමුදුරන් විශේෂයි වාර්ෂිකව පවත්වන සතර මහා මංගල්‍යයන් අතරින් ඇසළ පෙරහැර මහා මංගල්‍ය සුවිශේෂී වෙනවා. අද තෙවන කුඹල් පෙරහැර වීදි සංචාරය කරන දිනය. මල්වත් වස්කිරි උභය මහා විහාරීය මහානායක මාහිම්පාණන් වහන්සේලාගේ අවවාද අනුශාසනා පෙරදැරිව ශ්‍රී දළදා මාලිගාවේ ගරු දේවර්ණ නිලමේතුමන් සිව් මහා දේවාලයන්හි බස්නායක නිලමේතුමන්ලාගේ මෙහෙයවීමෙන් පෙරහැර සංවිධානය වෙනවා. උඩරට නර්තන සම්ප්‍රදාය විචිත්‍රත්වය ඔබට අත්විඳින්නට මේ පෙරහැර නැරඹීම තුලින් හිමි වෙනවා. ඒ නිසාවෙන් අපි තාමත් ගෞරවයෙන් ආරාධනා කරන ඔබට මෙවර මහනුවර නගරයට පැමිණ මේ පෙරහැර විසිතුර සියසින් දැක ගැනීමට අවස්ථාවක් උදා නොවන නිසාවෙන් නිවසේ සිට සජීවීව ඔබට ගෙන එන මේ පෙරහැර මංගල්‍යයේ අසිරිය අත්විඳින්නට. ඒ නිසාවෙන් ඔබට ඊටමත් ගෞරවයෙන් ආරාධනා කරනවා තෙවන කුඹල් පෙරහැරේ විසිතුර අත්විඳින්නට.
Podcast of the third Kumbal Procession brought to you by the Media Bureau of Sri Dalanda Maligava.
You are seeing the Perahera officials obtaining the permission and the blessings of the Devadana Nilame before commencing the street perambulations.
And now you see the Devadana Nilame handing over the keys to the officiating bhikkhus. And now making his way from the upper level to the lower level of the temple of Toothrilik, the chief incumbent of Malwatha Mahaviharaya, Venerable Tibbatuave Sri Medankaranayaka Thero, ceremoniously and reverentially takes the Perahera casket to be placed on the royal tusker. As you can see, the Perahera casket is being carried under red pavada and under much veneration to take the streets of this third Kumbal Procession.
Now view, witness the relic casket being placed within the Ranhilgi mounted on the adorned tusker who will glamour up the Kumbal Procession.
Perahera officials mounting the relic casket securely into the Ranhili gate. And now we see the great tusker making his way from the Mahavahalkada, known as the main entrance, to step onto the Sandagala in preparation to parade the streets of the city.
And the royal tusker for the third Kumbal procession this evening is Singharaja, who is making his first appearance in this year's Kandy Esala Perahera as a royal tusker.
In the background, we hear the Heavisi troupe play the Bahirva Valnadaya before they join the street perambulations on this beautiful evening. These are beautiful pictures you see of the trio of elephants clad in blue preparing to take the streets of the Kandian kingdom. And we are broadcasting the third Kumbal Perahera live from the ancient Mahamalua of the Sri Dalanda Malikava. Walking up front with the sound of the whips piercing through the skies are the whip crackers. And they have the responsibility of announcing that the procession has started.
This is a beautiful tradition that highlights the basis for giving, offering, and sharing among the people of our land. Regardless how rich or poor they are, everyone earlier offered their coins in great devotion. But today we witness that we don't have such people in the streets due to the current pandemic. But previously, it was performed with great devotion and with much joy to the oncoming Perahera.
It is also believed that the sound of the whip cracking depicts the sound of thunder in paying homage to rain gods, requesting to bless our crops and cultivation with rain. Therefore, we see how closely related these events are to phenomena of nature.
The duty of the whip master is to clear the way for the holy Perahera casket.
And although a whip would conjure fear in most minds, the sight of the Perahera whip masters in fact has the opposite effect. It calms the populace, since they are the ones who clear the way, as mentioned before, to the living Buddha to walk the streets of Kandy. What you see is the kasaya or the whip being retied. The whip is prepared with dried fiber taken from jute or hemp, and whips were prepared using these fiber woven into a thin rope of a length of about 7 feet. Rain does not come with the sound of thunder alone. Just as lightning flashes across skies, the procession too has its flashes of light. And this is an offering of fire, inviting the rain gods again to water our lands with rain. The sun, moon, earth, universe, solar month, day and night are all cyclic, and these fire dances beautifully highlights these universal cycles and how they burn and cool us in our life cycles.
The sight of lightning as a precursor to the descent of the rain gods is a phenomenon of nature. Those blinding flashes are a cooling heat in the Kandy Esala Procession. This is the heritage of the tradition of our torch dances. As you witness, the fire dancers, completely focused and immersed in their art, keep their minds and bodies one-pointed as they create their cyclic patterns of fire. This is because the slightest inattention could result in a disaster.
Indeed, the splendor of this dance is seen when a large group of them performs simultaneously, merging their fiery elements into an amazing display of light and heat, as you see. This in fact is a very dangerous act of fire, and it takes a lot of skill, devotion and dedication to perform this art with much confidence on this third Kumbal Procession. Next in line in the procession are the Buddhist flag bearers, clad in national flag costumes, carrying the Buddhist flags. We see these fire dancers showcase their skills and acrobatics beautifully as the Buddhist flag bearers come to the picture. The national flag leading the Buddhist flag bearers symbolizes that although this is primarily a Buddhist festival, it showers blessings and peace, prosperity and happiness to the whole island nation.
The sight of Buddhist flag creates a sense of unreflecting joy on the part of the people viewing the Kandy Esala Procession, reminding them that this is a celebration, devotion and offering to the Lord Buddha. The flag bearers can be seen coming into the sight with the colors of blue, white, yellow, red. Blue indicating universal compassion, white and goes with purity and liberation. Yellow provides the middle path and red goes with blessing.
Indeed, And the flag bearers create a sense of unlimited compassion of the Buddha. The sight calms the undisciplined, wayward minds and focuses them on love and compassion, radiating across the universe, the teachings of Lord Buddha. And now we see a group of sword bearers symbolizing the protection given to the tooth relic over the history. The sacred Dalanda tooth relic has been a symbol of kingship in the country from the day it was brought to the nation. And these sword bearers represents the protection given to the Dalanda tooth relic.
And following the sword bearers, we are seeing the leading tusker in today's third Kumbal procession. And leading the way is the leader of the Sri Dalada Maliga stables himself, and he is Indiraja. And on Indiraja's mount, we see the Peramunerala, or the leading official.
It is the norm of the procession that the Peramunerala, or the leader of the procession, is to be the first person on the back of an elephant, and neither officials nor elephants are permitted to arrive before the Peramunerala.
And now you are witnessing the first Hevisi group of the Dalanda procession. The Hevisi players, representing the traditional orchestra of Sinhala music known as Panchaturrinada, performing their acts with the Panchaturre Banda, which are the five-fold musical instruments. And in this Hevisi troupe, 4 of the 5 instruments are represented. Taking the lead, we see players play the daula, which is a large cylindrical drum. And next we see the tamtama, which is a 2-faced kettle drum. And we also see the thalampota, which are small hand cymbals which are used to keep the beat. And the tunes you hear is from the Horanava, a traditional Sri Lankan horn. And all these instruments together creates a very symphonic sound, unique to the Dalanda procession.
surrounded by the Gajagavannama or the symphony depicting the elephant, we see the official in charge of the royal stable, who is the Gajanayaka Nilame. And today, the Gajanayaka Nilame is joining the procession with the celebrity tusker Nadunga Mueraja. This tusker, whose name Vijay Raja, belongs to Dr. Harsha Dharma Vijaya of Valivaria in Gampaha and is fondly known as Nadunga Mueraja.
And this is the first Nayandi troop of the Dalanda procession. Nayandi is the name of the particular costume that they are clad in. It consists of the lower part of the waist costume, yet omits the elaborate headgear, which is the crowning piece of the entire outfit. And this headgear is replaced with a simple white turban. This expression of art and culture is not seen in any corner of the world in this form. It is a true identity that is owned and so preciously guarded by our own beautiful island nation, Sri Lanka. And it has to be specially noted that this Nayandi troop was trained by Vasanta Rajangana and Vasanta Gunatilaka.
Now following this Nayandi dance act, we see an official carrying a Buddhist flag to symbolize that this is truly a Buddhist festival. And this magnificent elephant is the tallest participant in today's procession, who is Gajaba, belonging to Mr. Ranjit Vijay Singha of the Moranvatta Devalaya in Yakkala.
And following Gajaba, we see yet another dancing troupe clad in the original Kandian dancing costumes, and they are known as the Pantheru dancers. The Pantheru is a circular brass instrument with small cymbals fixed onto it and gives a very subtle metallic sound. And this instrument is quite similar to a tambourine, but without a drumhead.
A special feature of the Pantheru dancers in the entire procession is that they are the original and traditional artisans.
You would have noticed that most of the elephants in the Kumbal Perahera are dressed in white to symbolize that this is a charmer version of the Esala Perahera, and this tusker is Vasana, belonging to the Ruhunu Maha Kataragama Devalaya.
And this is the most unique and most recognized of the Kandian dance heritage, the fully adorned Vesnattu troupe or the Kandian dancing troupe. The glamorous costume symbolically represents the regalia of the Malay king, the royal brothers who performed the ancient ritual Hatapas Mangalya 2500 years ago.
In ancient times, the West dancers obtained a royal honor after they dispelled unseen inimical forces that threatened the life of the king of Panduasnura.
Indeed, and therefore in the procession, in order to pay their respect to the Perahera casket, the king and the Nilame, they line the path in which they dance in two files of dancers. This procession tells a story of Sri Lanka, as it is the very embodiment of our own culture and values, which makes it stand out among all the diversity in the world. The songs you hear are the songs sung by the dancers as they dance along this procession, and these songs are based on the Gajaga Vannama. The slow tempo of these dancers symbolically represents the serene and calmness, and they do not dance the usual way they used to, since right now they are dancing in front of the sacred tooth relic, and they show respect and devotion through these dance. And as you can see in the middle, a group of Gatabele players provides the steady beat for these dancers to do their dancing act.
And now we see the most prestigious item of today's third Kumbal Perahera, the royal tusker Singharaja of the Sri Dalada Maligala stables carrying the Perahera casket, and accompanying him we have Burumaraja also of the Sri Dalada Maligala stables alongside with Kandula belonging to Venerable Kollupitiye Mahinda Sangarakita Thero, the chief incumbent of the Kalaniya Rajamahaviharaya. It has to be mentioned that the tuskers are adorned in traditional batik attire endemic to Sri Lanka, and we see this in the Kandy Esala Perahera after 30 years.
And this is the second West dancing troupe showing homage and respect to the Diyavad Nilame, who will walk the streets in a while. And these are the chamber of versifiers who in ancient times sang panjaris to the king. The West dancers had to traditionally don a costume of 64 ornaments, and it is believed to be the replica of an attire worn by the associated deity god Kumbal. And this attire is unique to the West dancing ritual. And now you are seeing the chief custodian, the Diyavad Nilame of the sacred tooth relic.
And today in this third Kumbal procession, we see the Basnayaka Nilame of the Sri Mahanatha Devalaya, Gayan Hinkenda, representing the position of the Diyavadana Nilame as custom to the Kumbal Perahera processions, where the four Basnayaka Nilames of the four shrines represent the Diyavadana Nilame on the 4 evenings, where the Diyavadana Nilame only represents the Kumbal Perahera on its first evening.
The honor and respect provided by the Thung Singhale to the king of the land is equally given to the Diyavadana Nilame. And it has to be specially noted that the Diyavadana Nilame is the only person allowed to walk the streets under the Muthukudaya or the Pearl Umbilla at the Perahera.
It also has to be mentioned that the Basnayaka Nilame or the Diyavadana Nilame representing the Kumbal Perahera procession will also be dressed in white to represent the charm nature of the Kumbal Perahera processions, where they will be dressed in color, which we will see in the Randoli Perahera processions yet to come.
And we see the guards provide the required protection to the Basnayak Nilame as he walks the streets of the city. This gesture symbolizes the protection given to the king of the land, and the guards also represents the royal infantry of the Danada Perahera. And closely following the Basnayak Nilame are the leaders of the 10 villages. And these 10 village leaders collectively paid their respect and homage to the sacred tooth relic by participating in this third Kumbal Perahera. And that marks the end of the Maligawa Perahera of this third Kumbal Perahera. And now you are witnessing scenes from the Natha Devalaya, the first of the 4 Devala Peraharas. And as you can see, the gaudy ornaments are being heralded with the drummers playing Ashirvada Pada, or the rhymes of blessings, with the godly ornaments to be placed on the top of the tusker, who will most respectfully walk the streets of this Kandian kingdom. And we now see a group of Buddhist flag bearers taking the lead of this Natha Devala Perahera. And Buddhism is very much closely related to the Natha Devalaya, because God Natha is believed to be the aspiring God to attain Buddhahood or Bodhisattva.
In fact, God Natha is believed to be the next Buddha, which is why the Natha Devala procession is following the Dalada Perahera procession.
As you can see, this Perahera is full of symbolic meaning.
And now we see the first elephant of the Sri Mahanatha Devala Perahera, with an official carrying the flag of God Natha. And this elephant is Arjuna, belonging to Venerable Dikwelle Tissathero, the chief incumbent of the Vaurukannala Rajamahawihara in Dikwelle.
And this is the first heavy troop of the Natha Devala Perahera. Here too we can witness the Horanava, the Daula, the Thammattama and castanets being collectively played to give a symphonic sound in this Natha Devala procession. The drummers on the forefront of the Natha Devala procession advancing to the sound of the Gaman Hevisi, which is a rhyme compatible with the drummer's walk. And here too we see the Hevisi troop adorned in traditional costume.
And following this troop of Hevisi, we see the mother and the son representing the Sri Mahanatha Devala procession. We see the mother Kumari along with her son Bandara, both belonging to Mr. Kamal Kitsiri of Kottava.
And this is again a Nayandi dancing troupe. I believe this is the second Nayandi dancing troupe we witnessed in this third Kumbal Perahera. The dancers in the Nayandi costume performed during the initial preparations of the Kohomba Kankari festival, during the lighting of the lamps and the preparation of food for demons. As mentioned before, these dancers wears a white cloth and a white turban, beadwork decorations on their chest, a waistband, rows of beads around their necks, silver chains, brass shoulder plates, anklets, and many other accessories. As you can see, this dancing style does not have many facial expressions. However, their eyes follow the hands and they performed stylized eye movements, paving the way to yet another duo of elephants.
And this duo of elephants can be identified as Vijita Raja, belonging to Venerable Milane Siri Alankara Thero, the chief incumbent of the Dimbulagala Rajamaha Vihara in Polonnaruwa, and Kandula, belonging to Mr. Roshan Patirana of Maharagama.
And now you witness a troupe of Sauran dancers. Similar to the Chamara fans, Sauran dancers use fans made of fine threads to send cooling rays in devotion to the Dalanda Perahera casket.
Indeed, the gentle breeze generated by these Chamar fans is there for the softest, and it denotes also in our minds and in the minds of the people witnessing this procession the rise and fall of our thoughts in our mind.
It is said that in days of yore it was a tale of Samara deer that lived in India that used for this purpose, and the air blown through the fine strands of its tail hair was said to be the most refreshing in the world.
And following this Savarang dance, we see another elephant taking part in the Sri Mahanatha Devala Perahera, and this elephant named Taraka belongs to the Honourable Basnayaka Nilami of the Sri Mahanatha Devale, Gayan Heenkenda himself.
And now we see yet another Pantheru dancing troupe in this Natha Devala procession. There are traditional families who have been handed down this valuable art throughout generations. Just to name a few: Urapula, Alapalava, Kadikamua, Pahataheva Hatta, and Verake are some leading traditional generations who have lived this art form to this day. And I believe we should be very thankful for these generations and for these families for making this art live through the years and allowing us to witness this today. We see these Pantheru dancers perform acrobatics, and this is one of the few dancers in this Dalanda procession that performs acrobatics.
And following this Pantheru dance, we see Lasanda, the female elephant belonging to the Devinuvara Upulwan Sri Vishnu Devalaya.
And for the third time, we see yet another group of Nayandi dancers taking the streets of the Kandyan kingdom. And these dancers singing and dancing the Gajaga Vannama as they pave the way to the godly ornaments of God Natha, performing salutary hand gestures known as Vandumat or Dakumat. Culture is very much part of the Sri Lankan community, and within this procession exists so much of symbolism and meaning that tells us stories of the ascents of our beautiful island nation and its inhabitants since the good old days. Speaking of which, this Nayandi dancing act has roots in the ancient village ritual known as the Kumbal Procession. And this, as mentioned before, is a very important folk ritual of this ancient Kumbal Procession. See them perform salutary hand gestures, showing their respect and veneration to the godly ornaments of God Natha. And this is the chief incumbent of the Natha Devala procession.
And following the chief incumbent of the Sri Mahanatha Devalaya, we see the ceremonial tusker of the Sri Mahanatha Devala procession carrying the godly ornaments of God Natha, and as usual, Muthuraja, belonging to Venerable Okkavita Vipulasara Thero, the chief incumbent of the Kandy Esala in Aludgama, will be taking his role today. And accompanying Muthuraja, we see Kumari, who also belongs to Vipulasara Thero of the Kandy Esala in Aludgama, and Rani, belonging to Mr. Nalaka Jayasinghe of Godagama.
And that marks the end of the first Devala procession. And now you are witnessing the Devala official most reverentially and respectfully bringing the godly ornaments of God Vishnu to be placed on the tusker. As we can see, the godly ornaments are brought under much veneration. And this is the devout moment at which the godly ornaments were placed on the tusker. And now we see a group of provincial flag bearers taking the lead of the Vishnu Devala procession, quite different to the previously witnessed Natha Devala procession. And rightly so, the Vishnu Devala procession takes a turn when it comes to the culture it portrays. These flags bear various symbols representing certain zonal and provincial areas. under the Kandian kingdom at the time.
And following the provincial flag bearers, we see the first official on an tusker in the Sri Maha Vishnu Devala procession. This official is carrying the flag of the Satara Koralaya, which is considered as a city guarded by God Vishnu. And this single tusked majesty is Rama, belonging to Mr. Tudor Gunasekara of Heyyam Tudua. In fact, Rama is the ceremonial tusk of the Vishnu Devala procession, who carries the godly ornaments of God Vishnu for the past 6 years, and today we see him leading the procession of God Vishnu.
And now we see yet another hay visit troop, and this is the hay visit troop of the Vishnu Devalaya. Here too we see a young personnel carry a Haggedia leading the hay visit troop. And again we see 4 of the 5 types of Panchature Banda representing the traditional orchestra of Sinhala music, namely the Daula, Thammattama, Thalampota and the Horanaga.
God Vishnu was supposed to appear in 10 different apparitions or avatars, as he is also aspiring to become a Buddha in a time to come. His major duties were to bless every living being and to protect the Buddha Sasana.
The music generated through different instruments and the many songs and verses sung may be quite noisy for some. However, these beats, rhythms and melodies are absolutely a unique combination that is very much part of our cultural heritage. As mentioned before, these are true identities owned and so preciously guarded by our beautiful island nation Sri Lanka, and of course by these traditional lineages and these traditional families who have secured these art throughout the years. The simplicity of these steps allows even the very young children to experience the honor of being a part of such an extravagant procession. However, these arts are not easy to master. It takes years and years of much dedication and skill to perfect this art of drumming and playing to the tunes of these Kandian traditional orchestra. The Thammattama we see is also known as the Pukuru Peraya, and this is yet another name given to the Thammattama in our ancient literature because of its 2 kettle drums bound together. And interestingly, South India has a folk instrument called thambatti. And this again shows the close cultural connection that Sri Lanka had with its neighboring countries.
And following this troop of Hevisi, we see one of the most senior participants of the Sri Maha Vishnu Devala procession. The name of this elephant is Banda, and Banda belongs to Mr. Sisira Samarakon of Polgahavela.
Moving in a very monotone and controlled manner right throughout the Perahera, you witness the Likeli troupe, or wooden stick dance. It is an instantly recognizable cultural icon of the Kandyan kingdom, depicting the traditional martial art of Angampora.
Indeed, and these martial artists displayed their skills in the courtyards of the Dalada Marikava in ancient times. And their skills have now been added to this procession in the form of this Likeli dance. And these young souls, either knowingly or unknowingly, are engaged in this great ancient Angampura tradition of the Hela martial warriors. That it has to be specially mentioned that God Vishnu has the color blue associated with him, and therefore it will be a common sight throughout this Vishnu Devala procession where the color of blue is involved and associated into all or most of the costumes, including this elephant.
And the duo of elephants we see in front of us is Muthu, belonging to Venerable Murundeniye Dhammaratana Thero, the chief incumbent of the Mutiyangana Raja Mahavihara in Badulla, alongside with Haritha, belonging to Mr. Tusita Ranavaka of Deniyaya.
And this is yet another Nayandi dancing troupe. And as we can observe, this Nayandi dancing troupe has a different colored headgear, which is again the turban, not the West Tatua, which is worn by the West dancers, representing their skill. And we now see these Nayandi dancers perform the Narumatrava, which is a style introduced to the Kandyan dancing tradition by the great Guru Nitya Velagunaya. He is one of the nation's most renowned traditional dancers of the 1940s and 1950s. This technique of dancing was derived from South India, again showing the close relations and the connections Sri Lanka had, or in fact the culture of Sri Lanka had with its neighboring countries. And it focuses on dynamism and powerful footwork.
And following this Nayandi dance performance, we see two elephants who share a family bond, Tikiri and Sanju, both belonging to Mr. Jagat Vitana of Matugama.
Now you witness a troupe of udaki players. The udaki is a hand drum that holds a special place in procession and celebrations. It is used as a tool that provides a steady beat or note to the Kavikara Madua or the chanting group.
And there is a very interesting historical background attached to this dancing pattern. According to folk religion, it is believed that the drum was gifted to the people by the gods. It is said to have been constructed according to the instructions of god Sakra, while the skin of the two faces of the drum and the very unique sound are believed to have been given by the gods Ishvara and god Vishnu respectively. And as we can see, these udaki players are adorned in traditional costumes similar to which was worn by the Panteru dancers.
And now we see three ladies who are actually frequent and occasional participants of the Sri Mahavishnu Devala procession, and they are None, belonging to Mr. Sarath Jayalath of Kurunagala, Mali, belonging to Mr. Chatura Vikramanayaka of Horana, and Muthu, belonging to Mr. Indika Mudunkoth of Manikinna.
We're in fact witnessing many troops of Nayandi dancers on the third Kumbal Perahera today. And this again is a Nayandi dancing troupe with red turbans tied around their heads. Although this dancing style originated in the pre-Buddhist rituals, thriving amongst Buddhist cultural surroundings for centuries, the dance became very synonymous with Buddhist ceremonies despite its pre-Buddhist origins. And again we see the slow, serene tempo maintained by these Nayandi dancers, showing the respect and veneration to the incoming godly ornaments of God Vishnu. And now you are witnessing the Nayandi dancing troupe performing salutary gestures with their hand movements, welcoming the chief incumbent of the Vishnu Devala procession, standing in a white tuppotia, which is very unique to the Kumbal Devala processions.
Followed by the chief incumbent of the Sri Mahavishnu Devalaya, we now see the ceremonial elephant Suranimala belonging to the Aluthnura Dadimunda Devalaya carrying the godly ornaments of God Vishnu. And accompanying Suranimala, as usual, we have Vasana belonging to Mrs. Krishanti Alapatha of Ratnapura, and Sita belonging to Mrs. Nilanthi Veerasinghe of Meerigama. In fact, it is Suranimala's first time in carrying the godly ornaments in this year's Perahera procession.
And that marks the end of the Vishnu Devala procession. And this is the third Devala Perahera, which is the Kataragama Devala Perahera. And you are witnessing the godly ornaments of God Kataragama being heralded by the Perahera officials, the Devala officials from the Kataragama Devala premises. We see that the godly ornaments are being brought, are being carried under much veneration. And leading the Kataragama Devala procession, we see a group of Buddhist flag bearers together with a group of cloth flag bearers, symbolizing the godly vehicle of God Kataragama, which is the peacock, which you will witness in a moment.
Majority of Sri Lankans widely worship God Kataragama. Even the Hindus have revered God Kataragama as a very strong and a powerful god.
Indeed, and rightly so, the Kataragama Devala procession would show a slight increase in the tempo of dancers, symbolizing the power and the strength of God Kataragama. And in these provincial flags, we witness pictures of the peacock, as mentioned before, the godly vehicle of God Kataragama. And this is the first hay visit troop of the Kataragama Devala procession. In fact, the only hay visit troop of the Kataragama Devala procession. And leading the hay visit troop, we see a Horana player providing the tune for these drummers to do their act, and together creating a beautiful symphonic sound roaring through the skies of this Kandian kingdom. These dancers, instrument players and other people who are part of this procession engage in this amazing event for a number of days at a stretch. And they do it out of pure respect and honor for the sacred tooth relic and the godly ornaments of the respective devalas.
Unlike the other Devala processions in the series of Kumbal Procetions, we see a Gajanayaka Nilame in the procession of God Kataragama. And this elephant carrying the Gajanayaka Nilame of the Sri Maha Kataragama Devalaya is Manike, who belongs to Mr. Anura Kempitiya of Kegol. We see most of the elephants in this part of the procession are dressed in the color red, which is known to be the color affiliated with god Kataragama.
Indeed, the elephants and tuskers draped in such fascinatingly designed cloth adds beauty to the entire procession. And following this elephant is a group of castanet players. And this is in fact a very young group of castanet players making their way through this Kataragama Devala procession. And this is in fact a Bharatiya dancing style. The timing is maintained using castanets. The Thalam dance is a common form of dance around Sri Lanka, and this is in fact the Kandian form of the Thalam dance, which is accompanied by the Gatabereya and Thammattam players. In addition to the Gatabere and the Thammattam players, we also see a flute providing a beautiful tune for these castanet players to perform their dancing act. And as you can see, these Thalampata players, they have a piece of cloth attached to their thalang, and this can be described under the category of Rupanatum, meaning picturesque dance.
We are now seeing yet another elephant in the procession of god Kataragama, and this elephant is Ratna, who belongs to Venerable Bengamue Dhammadinna Thero, the chief incumbent of the Siripada Vihara and also the historic Palmadulla Rajamaha Vihara in Ratnapura. And on Ratna's mount, we see an official carrying a canopy, which is to symbolize protection to the godly ornaments of god Kataragama.
And now you witness yet another wooden stick dancers. These dancers display their skills and enter into the hearts of the people through the stylized rituals of warrior skills hidden in their dance form. The steps taken in certain movements, even though reflected similarly, however, the instruments produce the beat for the dance, and the verses sung in the dance are what creates a beauty.
And these young wooden stick dancers are also clad in red, symbolizing the color of god Kataragama. And as mentioned before, the dancers, as they proceed through the Dalanda procession to the Kataragama Devala procession, gradually increases in its pace. And as we can rightly see, these wooden stick dancers perform dancing acts which are of fast beats, representing the energy and the strength of god Kataragama, for he is believed to be the god of war. And these wooden stick dancers are also accompanied by Gatabere drummers and Thammattam players.
And now, following this energetic dance act, we see two more elephants joining the procession. On one side, we have Chula, belonging to Venerable Bengamuye Dhammadinna Thero, the chief incumbent of the Siripada Vihara and the Pelmadula Rajamaha Vihara. And on the other side, we see Sama, belonging to Venerable Uduwe Dhammaloka Thero, the chief incumbent of the Alan Methiniyarama temple in Kirulapana.
And this is yet again a troupe of Udaki players attired in traditional costume with a white turban and breast ornaments together with a white cloth wrapped around their waist. The Udarata, Sabaragamo and Pahatarata cultures use Udaki as an instrument. However, only in the Udarata culture it is represented as a dancing act. And the long string with a tussle at the end is in fact used to modulate the sound of this Udaki drum. And we see typical movements of the Udaki dance, which is the waving and swirling of this tussle.
And following this dance act, we see two more elephants. On one side, we have Kadira, belonging to the Vipassiyanarama temple in Maharagama, alongside with Panduka, who belongs to the Ganevatta Kataragama Devala in Piliyandala, who is currently under the responsibility of Mr. Chandana Katriyarachi.
And we see yet another Nayandi dancing troupe, accompanied by two groups of Gatabeta drummers. And this Nayandi dancing troupe has been trained by Upananda Thalgahagoda of the Ratna Kalayathanaya. As we see, the drummers in the middle perform in two groups. While one group plays the main beat, the other group improvises on intricate patterns, thus creating a rhythmic pattern that stimulates the dancers.
Another speciality in the series of Kumbal Processions is that we see the Nayandi dancers welcoming the godly ornaments, whereas in the Randoli Perahera processions we will see West dancers taking place.
And this is the chief incumbent of the Kataragama Devala procession, also known as the Iyer. And he is draped in his traditional costume, very unique to the Kataragama Devala procession. And as you can see, these Nayandi dancers just performed the Narumatrava, and they are performing salutary gestures to the chief incumbent and the ornaments of God Kataragama.
even in this procession, we see the performers adhering to the current health regulations. Wearing masks and performing such an energetic performance is not an easy deed, isn't it?
Indeed. However, given the circumstances, we are indeed blessed to witness this procession, at least in this form. And this is the devout moment where the godly ornaments of God Kataragama, accompanied by a trio of elephants, are being heralded in this Kandian kingdom.
And the ceremonial elephant of the Sri Maha Kataragama Devalaya today is Sankaraja, belonging to Venerable Kolumbageyara Mahinda Thero, the chief incumbent of the historic Sankapala Rajamahawihar in Ambilipitiya. And Sankaraja is accompanied by Esala, belonging to Venerable Katugasthara Sharada Thero of the Senanayaka Pirivena in Varakapala, and Aruna, belonging to Venerable Higgoda Saddhananda Thero, the chief incumbent of the Handala Rajamahawihara in Vattala.
And that marks the end of the Kataragama Devala procession. And we will now witness pictures from the Pattini Devalaya located in the Senkadagala kingdom. And we hear Magulbera, or the Kandian drum, followed by Alatipada, by the Daula and the Thammattama being played. We see the Perahera officials venerate the godly ornaments while the Alati Amma performs her blessings with a lamp.
Goddess Pattini is a deity who commands great respect among the most of the citizenry of the country. The only female representation at the Dalanda procession is the Pattini Esala Perahera. And as you witness, yet again there is a troop of flag bearers. These white-clad flag bearers remind the people of the way the Buddha's Dharma impacts in their lives and the way to obtain relief from the cycle of life. And not only that, it clearly demonstrates a cultural unification as per the flags being represented in Pattini Esala Perahera.
Folklore has stated that Goddess Pattini was a great model who preserved her chastity, and due to this great and noble quality, she could obtain the highest venerations of human beings. And for that reason, Goddess Pattini is rightly one of the most venerated gods in this Dalanda procession. And following the Buddhist flag bearers, we see the first heavy troop of the Pattini Esala procession, led by 4 Horana players. And this heavy troop was trained by M.G. Palita Nishankar, M.G. Sirisena, and M.G. Premadasa. Belief in Goddess Pattini with faith brought blessings on all children and women. As mentioned before, she is supposed to be a goddess of noblest qualities, and those who believed in her were cured from hidden diseases and skin diseases, provided they led a religious life. The music generated from these heavy instruments comes from instruments that are played in unison with beautiful rhymes and beats that complement each other in great ambience. And this shows the great amount of skill and the culture, the rich culture that the Senkadakila kingdom possessed, and the culture that has been brought throughout these years to this day. And again, these drummers have a very slow tempo, accompanied by the tunes of the Gajaga Vannama on their horns, or the Hurane in Sinhala.
And in front of us, we see the first elephant of the Sri Mahapattini Devala procession. And she is Sita, belonging to Mr. Roshan Patirana of Maharagama. And on Sita's mount, we see an official carrying a Buddhist flag. In this part of the procession, we would see most of the elephants dressed in the color of yellow, which is believed to be connected with the story of goddess Pattini.
And as we mentioned before, this is the first female representation in the whole of the Dalanda procession. And this is the female Panteru dancers. The beauty of this Pattini Devala procession is magnified with the joining of these beautiful female dancers adorned in vibrant colored attire and head accessories. The Panterua, in fact, is closely associated with goddess Pattini. It is believed that the Panterua is designed and resembles the anklet of goddess Pattini.
Following this unique dance performance, we see a very special participant of the Sri Mahapattini Devalaya, the ceremonial elephant who has been carrying the godly ornaments of goddess Pattini for the past 16 years. This is Mangala, who was gifted to the Sri Lanka Ramanya Nikaya and is currently under the responsibility of Mr. Udara Galapatti of Giriyulla.
And this is a troupe of female West dancers, which is the counterpart of the male West dancing tradition or the male West dancing art. Here too we see very elaborate and beautiful costumes with a headgear similar to the male West dancers with a ribbon and a tassel at the end of it.
And following this beautiful female dance performance, we see two friends coming from the same hometown. Rani belonging to Mr. Richard Gonakumbura and Kumari belonging to Mr. Asanka Vijayasinghe, both from Balangoda.
And this is a Chamara, female Chamara dancing troupe. And this group was trained by the Sarasavi Art Center in Mologoda. This is an act of devotion to the godly ornaments of goddess Pattini. And these dancers use the Chamara fan made of fine threads and cords to engage in a very controlled dance, different to other dancers with a higher tempo. And the simple steps of these dance, accompanied by tam players, dowel players and flutes, makes it easy for any young personnel who has the skill and devotion to take part in this procession.
And now we see one of the final elephants of the Sri Mahapattini Devala procession, who is Manike, belonging to Mrs. Shriyani Gunawardana of Dangovita. And on Manike's mount we see an official carrying a snake head canopy to symbolize protection to the godly ornaments of goddess Pattini.
And this is a Nayandi dancing troupe adorned in traditional attire. And this might as well be the final dancing act we would witness on this third Kumbal Procession.
These dancers are processed under the leadership of Mithun Bandara, under the training of Mithun Bandara Academy, Watapuluwa.
We see them perform the Narumatrava, and as the drums beat, the dancers move their hands, feet and body in perfect harmony with their fellow performers, as we see, until the crescendo of this performance, which everyone in the audience witnessing this third procession from home awaits in anticipation. There are different types of drummers in the Kandian heritage, namely Atata, Vitata and Vitatatata. And the Gatabera you see right now falls into the category of Atata, meaning being played with hands alone.
And now we see the final episode of the third Kumbal procession for the year 2021. The ceremonial elephant of the Sri Mahapattini Devalaya carrying the godly ornaments of goddess Pattini. And this ceremonial elephant today is Bibila, who belongs to the Sri Lanka Ramana Nikaya and is under the responsibility of Mr. Udara Galapatti of Giriyula. Bibila is accompanied by Bandara belonging to Mr. Kitsiri Kahatapiti of Horana and Manike belonging to Mr. H.R. Nishanka of Kegol.
And what you just witnessed was the conclusion of the third Kumbal Procession.
Let there be timely rains that will bring life-giving water to our fields and ensure a bountiful harvest. May our country prosper.
Dalanda Samidu Pihitai.